Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, it's me, Diazzo, back in the Card by Vanguard deck profile. So if you guys enjoyed, don't like, comment, subscribe, and subscribe. This time we're covering set 12 for Gandiva, Dragon Empire. So, Gandiva is that one deck that, like, I think it was like the solemn consensus that pretty much Gandiva, how do I put this the way I'm trying to put this? What was like the very solid deck going out of its first set. Like a lot of decks, depending on what they are like kind of solid and kind of not, depending on their support the very first set they come out. But Gandiva kind of broke that mold by being like, basically had like the perfect structure. Like it could do its job well, it can do it consistently. Hell, even my build that wasn't meant to do it consistently, did it consistently and then still hit bullshit numbers. So yeah, and now with set 12 introduction, we didn't get too many broken bullshit that basically made the deck even better, but I mean, we got two good cards, so there is that. So let's go get the start, shall we, and see what we got. So let's start off with our starter today, and first up it will be Scarlet Flame Recruit Barkish, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 6k base, honorable when wrote upon if you win second, draw a card, standard starter, no surprise, free draw if you win second. None of the round line really requires this, but you know, just for the sake of theming, it's nice to have. Also, I am extremely biased towards this entire set because they all have arrows, and for those of you that don't know, arrows are one of my top 5 favorite weapons of all time, so yeah, quite literally this is like my heaven. So Barkish is my starter one way or another, whether its skill has nothing to do with the deck or not. Then we have our Overtrigger and Dragon Deity King of Resurgence Drag Veda, grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power. Overtrigger, you have Overtrigger in your deck. When revealed as a trigger, move that card, draw a card, choose one of your units, it gets plus 1 million for the turn, and if you revealed it during your drag check, activate its additional effect, which you can choose one of your Vanguards and stand it. All around pretty solid, you get a restand of the Vanguard, and you get 1 million, and when the Vanguard has double crit on it, it's good. Like, technically speaking, in this deck, the 1 million doesn't really matter because, I mean, hell, the deck hits numbers anyways, but the 1 million pretty much makes sure that your opponent's going to take the attack regardless. And again, when you're having a deck that has a double crit Vanguard and it restands, yeah, that's pretty much good pressure for game. So one Drag Veda is nice to have. You can use Volnut, you can use Albar. Okay, Albar is not really recommended because, again, the deck gets enough numbers, but you can use Volnut for more attacks. But I do prefer Drag Veda because the Vanguard is double critical, so I might as well put more pressure on that one. Then we have our normal triggers, 3 draw triggers in Flail Dragon, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 4k base, contains guard circle, opponent's Vanguard to grade 3 grades, 5k shield. You know, really nice to have. It helps increase the hand, which is nice, and also it's just, you know, a 10k shield. It's not really needed. I forgot what the build was people were running. I think it had like extra crits because the deck could just afford to run extra crits. I just run Rainbow it, and the reason I do this is because I see them all so well. I run the draw trigger just to increase my hand because I know if I have to, I will drop my entire hand just to hit the 5 bind zone cards. So the draw actually helps keep me in check with that. Then the front, I run the front simply to flex on people, and it's so funny to like pull the front and then just increase your numbers out the wazoo to the point where if they believed they had a chance of guarding, yeah, that chance was thrown out the window about 5 seconds ago. So the front is purely here just to fuck with people. Anyways, good to a boost, 15k shield, 4k power, continues guard, so opponent's Vanguard to grade 3 gets 5k shield. You know, it's 20k shield, that's to have. Again, I say the free 10k to the front row. I put it in here solely to fuck with people. Run the extra crit, by all means, be smart, pressure your opponent with the big numbers and extra criticals. But like I said, I just like doing this because it's funny just to see a number go from, I don't know, in my mind, from like consistently a 40 to 50 range, then just to 60 flat, and then any hope that they had of winning is gone. So it's nice to see that. And we have our 4 crits in Burning Flail Dragon. Grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 4k power, critical trigger, auto rear at the end about boosted. Put this unit into your soul, choose one of your units, it gives 2k for the turn. All around nice. Like, it goes to soul on occasion, like I said, in those occasions where I actually have to draw up my entire hand, those are probably the occasions I'm about to like have 0 soul. So basically using Burning Flail to get my soul back is pretty nice, even if the 2k doesn't do anything, but it is nice to have. So 4 crit for the pressure, obviously. Then we have 4 White Light Dragon Parasolas, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 5k power, standard heal, and that's about it. I don't really like the effect heals too much, in my opinion. There's too situational, being 10k shields most of the time and only 25k shields in specific situations. I would have a consistent 15k shield over the fluctuating 10 to 25, but if you want to run the effect heals, go ahead. Then we move on to our grade 1s. First, we run 4 copies of Scarlet Flame Artillery Soldier R-Sharp, our first new card. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. I love how he's just like a trapezist, kind of, but in Dragon Empire with the dual bullets, which again is one of my favorite weapons, specifically dual pistols. Anyways, auto rear guard. When this unit attacks or boosts, it gets plus 2k power to end of battle for each card in your bind zone. If the power gain was 10k or greater, retire this unit at the end of the battle. This effect is mandatory. So what I love about this is regardless of what Vanguard you're on, granted you can't start binding until you're correct Gandiva. But regardless of what Vanguard you're on, he is guaranteed to just start hitting numbers, regardless whether he swings into a Vanguard, regardless if he boosts into a Vanguard, hell, regardless if he goes into a rear guard in general. He is amazing. R-Sharp just gets like probably 18k on the first grade 3 turn, but that implies that there's at least 5 cards in bind zone, and then because Gandiva's on the Vanguard circle, that goes to 28. So R-Sharp is just all around a very solid grade 1. It is amazing for rushing. It is probably the best number hitter in this deck by a long shot just because of what it does it all for free, and the only downside is it retires itself, but I mean, that's not really much of a downside, that's more of like balancing it. So 4 of R-Sharp, very good grade 1, and I'm not going to run any less of it. Then we have 4 copies of Scarlet Flame Bow Soldier Bosun. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, AK base, auto back or rear guard circle when your Gandiva Vanguard and its card name attacks. I knew I forgot to fix one of them. Anyways, if your bind zone has 3 more cards, bind this unit face down to draw a counter charge one. I don't know why I said draw a card. All around, pretty solid. Doesn't matter where in the back row it is, as long as it's in a back row circle. And then when Gandiva swings, maybe before you use the really good grade 2 to top 5 search free stuff, you can bind this face down as long as you have 3 or more, and then get a counter charge out of it to make the cost free. All around, Bowson is a very solid grade 1. It helps get the CB back, especially again when you drop your entire hand to bind stuff. But then also it can, you know, just put itself into bind zone regardless if you counter charge or not to get your numbers higher. All around, very solid grade 1, does its job very well for Gandiva, and honestly I kind of wish Bushy does this more, like they just make a lot more decks really good out the first set, because my god, this deck was so fun to play in its first set. It was so fun. Anyways, 4 of Bowson, very solid grade 1, gets counter charge, gets bind zone cards up, and all for the simple cost of having a Gandiva Vanguard and having 3 more cards in bind zone. Very solid. Then we have 4 copies of our PG and Sparkle Rejector Dragon. Grade 1 boost is Yo Shosuke base, contains set top. You may have up to 4 Sentinels in deck, and auto when it's put on guard circle. Choose one mutes. It cannot be hit till in the battle, and if your hand has 2 or more cards, choose a card from your hand's card. Standard PG. Nothing much about it. Basically, that means if this and only one other card's in your hand when you place it on guard circle, you don't have to discard one, which is great, because that means you can be as aggressive as you want in the early game, and then when your opponent counterattacks you, and again, go wide, bring out as many bind cards as possible. When your opponent counterattacks you, because they know next turn they're dead, then you can just throw this down without having to discard something, and then you can sit there like, you know what, that is a nice attempt. I gave you respect for that. Here, as respect, die. So all around, Sparkle Rejector Dragon, very solid PG. You can run Trimbuckler if you want, because they have the exact same skill, but I run Sparkle Rejector Dragon because Sparkle Rejector Dragon was closer to the reveal time of Gandiva than Twin, whatever the fuck its name was, Twin Catapult Dragon, whatever. I forgot his name. Point is 4 Sparkle Rejector Dragon, very solid PG. Then we have our last grade 1 of the ride deck, 1 of in the ride deck, none in the main deck, sadly, because it has no rear guard skill, and that is Scarlet Flame Bow Soldier Akred. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, AK base, contains Vanguard circle. If your opponent has 1 or less rear guards, when you would ride Scarlet Flame Bow Soldier to panel from your ride deck, you can ride without discarding a card from your hand, which all around is pretty solid. So basically, if your opponent has only called 1 rear guard, you can just ride for free, which is nice. And then auto when it's rode upon, if your opponent has 2 or more rear guards, you may call this card to rear guard circle. Cool. It's not a mandatory card call, so if you want to keep it in soul just to keep soul cards, that's nice. That's an option. But also, you know, if your opponent end up calling 1 more rear guard so you don't get the free ride deck, you can now get a free rear guard, and if you went first, that's great because now you can pressure out their 8k Vanguard. So 1 of Akrid, very solid grade 1, either gets you a rear guard or gets you a free ride deck, and the rear guard call is not mandatory, so you can keep it in soul if you want to. All around, very solid skill. I like it a lot. 1 of in the ride deck, none in the main deck. Then we have 4 copies of our first grade 2, Scarlet Flame Bow General Ruginant. Grade 2 is a 5k shield, 10k base, auto and placed on rear guard circle. If you have Vanguard Gandiva in its card name, by counterbalancing 1, you can choose one of your opponent's rear guards and murder it, and if you do not retire, draw a card and choose a card from your drop zone and bind it face down. All around, pretty solid. It is a simple CB. This is pretty much what I call down most of the time. Well, it's a split between this and the grade 3, but one of the two always comes down just to get as many cards in bind zone as possible. Being able to kill an opponent's rear guard is great, but most of the time you are not looking to kill opponent's rear guards, and the best part is, if you don't kill your opponent's rear guard, you're getting a draw and a bind from drop zone. The reason why you don't look for your opponent's rear guards to kill is because, while yes, Gandiva would benefit from it, you don't get the draw out of it, and you get the bind anyways, so you're really looking for the draw, but hey, if you have to kill something, at least you're getting a bind out of it regardless. So, pretty much, it's a good card, it's a guaranteed bind no matter what you do, as long as you're on Gandiva, and it's a draw if you don't kill something. So, for Ruginant, just a very solid grade 2, either kill something in binds, or doesn't kill something and you draw and bind. Very solid grade 2, there's not much more I can say about it. Then we have 4 copies of probably the only card in this deck I think that can't bind in some way, shape, or form. Okay, outside of this thing, but this thing doesn't count. And that is Drag Gritter Al-Fakar. I know that's not how you pronounce his name, but like, come on, that's what it looks like. Anyways, grade 2 and set 5k shield, 10k base, auto rearguard circle. When your Vanguard Gandiva and its card name attacks a grade 3 or greater Vanguard, by counterblasting one and binding this unit face down, look at the top 5 cards of your deck. You have to one grade 3 or less unit card from among them. Call it to rearguard circle and shuffle your deck. All around pretty solid. You just straight up bind it face down for a simple CB, and then you get a free rearguard. The best play to do with this, obviously, if you're on Gandiva, have at least 5 cards in bind zone. So A, the Vanguard's a critical, but B, the front row gets plus 10. Call 2 Alfuckars, maybe call one of these things to mitigate the cost. You swing with both Alfuckars. The Vanguard swings because you have 3 more cards of bind zone probably. Bounce then to countercharge one, and then Alfuckars to call 2 units. All around, very solid grade 2. It gets rear guards on the board. It allows for multi-attack for like the simplest cost, and the only requirement is that the Vanguard Gandiva swings into a grade 3 or greater Vanguard, and on the bright side, it also binds itself, so you get more numbers out of this. I remember there was a game where, because of the current board setup, granted I had to lose my booster on Gandiva, but I had 3 of these in the back row and 2 of these in the front row. I got a free plus 10 just for using skills. 4 Alfuckar. Very solid grade 2, and works really well with both in tandem. Then we have our last grade 2, one of in the ride deck, none in the main deck, of Scarlet Flamebow General D panel. Grade 2 and SF 5k shield, 10k base, auto roll upon by a unit with Gandiva and its card name. Choose one of your Vanguards, and the cost of that unit's original act ability is reduced by CB1 until end of turn. All around pretty solid because Gandiva's only skill that has a cost to it is its CB1 skill. So basically, for the first turn, Gandiva's cost is free, and I always wondered why that was. Granted, the deck does so much better with that, because I did actually test a game where if it didn't drop the CB, what would happen, and yeah, it does better with it, but I'm just questioning, like, was that really necessary? Like, at that point, they kind of just let the floodgates go wild. But, I mean, hey, being able to drop your CB cost is great, so even if your opponent CB starves you, you can still use Gandiva to Borg nuke them, because they can't really stop it on the first turn. So, all-around D-panel, very solid grade 2, makes the Vanguard skill free. If we ever get another Gandiva, I'm pretty sure they're going to make its cost CB2 just out of spite, and also to not make sure this thing can break it. So, one of in the ride deck of D-panel, sadly not in the main deck, because it doesn't have a rearguard skill, but hey, when it makes the Vanguard free, there's no reason to run in the main deck. And then we have our grade 3s. First, we run 3 copies of Scarlet Flame War General Bravaldin. Okay, there we go. Grade 3, 10 persona, 13k base. I love his hair. I love his armor. I don't love anything else about him. Continuous deck. When this card is revealed by the ability of Vanguard Gandiva and its card name, it's also regarded as a grade 1 and 2. So basically, if you flip this over from Gandiva's effect, you can kill a grade 3, a grade 1, and a grade 2 all at the same time. I don't know why it's like that, it just is, but cool, it can do a triple kill. And then continues, also an auto rearguard, sorry, when this unit attacks into a Vanguard, if your Vanguard is Gandiva, bind a card from your hand, face down, and then choose one of your opponent's rearguards, murder it, and if you do not retire something, draw a card and get plus 5k power for the battle. Okay, so this is like the one card that is not amazing, because pretty much everything else that can retire something can get a free bind if you don't kill something, basically making Gandiva not minus. But this one, I mean, hell, you get a bind regardless because you are binding a hand card face down, and then if you don't kill something, you can still get the hand card back via a draw and 5k power. So all around, Bravaldin, still can't say his name for some reason, is a very solid grade 3. You know, it basically makes so Gandiva can hit 3 things at once if it gets flipped over by Gandiva's skill, but also it can reach your bind zone up very easily, and it's on swing, meaning if you find a way to restand it, or you just, you know, call it via this thing, then you can use it a lot easier for no cost because it doesn't cost CB or Soul B. So 3 of Bravaldin. It's a solid grade 3, and there's not much more to say about it. Then we have 4 copies of my personal favorite grade 3, and honestly, probably my favorite unit in this deck outside of this, so it's, you know, take it as it is. Scarlet Flamebow General Sturgunna. Grade 3, 10 persona, 13k base. Auto when placed on rearguard circle if you have a Vanguard Gandiva and its card name. By soul blasting one and binding another rearguard face down. Choose an opponent's rearguard and retire it. If you're not retired, draw a card and choose a card from your drop zone and bind it face down. All around pretty solid because it's a guaranteed to bind. No matter how you look at this, it's a guaranteed to bind. You get a card into your drop zone, since Gandiva binds from drop zone. If your drop zone is empty, boom, fits the cost. Then it binds another rear guard, so that's one thing. And then either you kill something, and then you get to bind from Gandiva skill, so 2 binds, or you don't kill something, you get to draw, and then you bind again. So, or you get bind in general. So either way, you get 2 binds out of it, and it fills up your drop zone, so you can guaranteedly get the bind. All around, Sturgunna is very nice, and it can be placed on rear guard during the battle phase, which works really well with Alfuckar over here. So does this one. So all around, Sturgunna is just a very solid grade 3. It guarantees 2 binds, and the only minus to this, quote-unquote, is you have having to lose a rear guard. But I mean, if you are going on the attack and you have Alfakars, you can just, I don't know, bind a rested rear guard. Or if you just play it during the main phase, what I do, I typically have 2 of them in hand. I'll just call one, kill something else that's not important to me. Most of the time, it's this thing, believe it or not. And then afterwards, I call another one, and then I bind the other one. So, for Sturgina, really solid grade 3, gets a guaranteed 2 bind, gets a draw, and he's just really cool, and his bow is very defined. So, 4 up for me, there's nothing you can change my mind about this, and even when new support comes out, I will probably scrap this before I scrap this because of how much I love him. Then we have our last card in the deck, one of in the main deck, or sorry, reverse that, one of in the ride deck, 3 of in the main deck, of Scarlet Flame, Martial Dragon, Gandiva. Grade 3, Twin Drive, Persona Ride, 13k base, Auto Vanguard Circle. When your opponent's rear guards retired during your turn, choose a card from your drop zone, and you may bind it face down, not a mandatory bind, but I mean, hell, this deck gets numbers from it, so you're going to bind. But, yeah, Sturgana, this thing, where is it, this thing? So being able to do all this free binding is nice, and you may be wondering if you haven't played against Gandiva before, or if you haven't played as Gandiva in general, then you might not know why you're doing all this binding, and that reason is for this. Continuous Vanguard Circle. During your turn, all your former units, including itself, get plus 2k power for each face-down card in your bind zone. If your bind zone is 5 or more face-down cards, it gets plus 1 critical. Meaning whether your opponent's Vanguard's at grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, fuck, if you manage a way to do it, grade 1, you can get 2k power for every face-down card in the bind zone. Not for every 2, no, not for every 3, for every 1. Now, that may not sound like a lot, but when this deck is, and I've seen it, and when this deck is capable of hitting 10 cards in bind zone on first grade 3 turn, that's a free plus 20 to front row, and I did that when my opponent was at grade 2, and I got a crit out of it. That was a 33k double crit Vanguard swing, without triggers, boosters, nothing. Just 33k, double critical to a grade 2 Vanguard that was at 4 damage. I won that turn, needless to say, but either way though, Gandiva basically pretty much adds a shit ton of pressure to the board. Like, for every single time you're binding, your entire front row gets so much stronger. You know, you can use Boston to bind during the battle phase. You can use this to technically bind during the battle phase or main phase. You can use this to get a bind. You can use this to get a bind. You can use this to get a bind. There are so many ways just to get binds. And you may be wondering, okay, well, if you're doing all this binding, then what other way does Gandiva have to help when really it's the rear guards doing all the binding? Well, in reality, Gandiva can also bind himself, and frankly, this is the part that gets stupid. Active Vanguard Circle once per turn, counterblast 1. Choose 5 of your opponent's rear guards with different grades. So, technically speaking, if they have a grade 4, a grade 3, a grade 2, a grade 1, and a grade 0, then good luck with that, but I mean, fair enough. And then you reveal the top 5 cards of your deck, retire all the chosen units with the same grade as any of the revealed cards, shuffle the deck, and if you retired 1 or less units, draw a card and choose a card from your drop zone and bind it face down. So, basically, no matter what, you are getting 2 binds out of this, at the very least. Because either you hit only 1 target, so you get the retire, and you get the draw and bind through this part, and then you get to bind off this skill, or you hit all the targets, or you hit any more than 1, and then for each 1 retired, you're getting 1 bind, or at least that's how it's been explained to me. Either way, though, this thing just turbocharges numbers that can board wipe people. And remember, this skill is free on the first grade 3 turn thanks to this motherfucker. Like, quite literally, easiest deck to play by a long shot. It gets numbers out the wazoo so consistently. It binds things so consistently. It does it for so cheap of a cost to the point where there's not really a way to stop it, unless the only way you stop it is you brick and you see all the CB users, and then your opponent just damage stars you because they guessed you drew all the CB users. But I promise you, unless that happens, this deck will hit 5 cards in bind zone really quickly. So 3 of in the main deck of Gandiva, 1 of in the ride deck. It gets crit pressure, it gets numbers out the wazoo so easy. And I tell you what, first grade 3 turn, that's where you have mercy, because you know they can't kill you, unless like they go try hard. Second grade 3 turn, consistently hitting in the 50s. Just quit while you're ahead. But, gets a crit, gets numbers, possibly can board nuke, bind stuff by any logical means whatsoever, whether your opponent's retired during, as long as it was retired during turn, the best part is, it just is when retired during your turn. Doesn't matter by what. So even if you don't kill it by effect, if you just swing into it, you get that bind. This card is stupid. It does everything it wants so perfectly, and I can't argue with it. 3 of in the main deck, 1 of in the red deck. There's nothing I can say about it. And if you're wondering why I don't run Best Harvest, because I consider Best Harvest a Eugene card. Does that matter? No, but to me it does, so take that as you will. Either way, though, that's the end of this deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed. All around, this deck is just stupid to a whole other degree of stupid. Like, It gets the retire well done. Like, either for most of them, if you don't get the retire, you get a draw guaranteed, and then most of them give you a bind, and this is the only one that doesn't. You have multiple ways to bind to speed up Gandiva skill. Once you hit the 5 cards in bind zone, which is very easy to hit, you get a good amount of numbers and extra crit on a first grade 3 turn, then second grade 3 turn was pretty much game, and you can board nuke your opponent. There is no downside to this deck, or like there's no struggle that it has. So without further ado, I'm getting this one here. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and follow Twitch, and I'll see you on the next one. Don't forget to stand up your vanguards.